Okay, welcome to the Crow Discovery Project. I made a clip on Pluto that was kind of an afterthought a few days ago, which is why it's being covered in the Daily Mail in the UK and Gizmodo, and there's even another big magazine, mainstream magazine in the US that's going to pick it up. And it's a shame because it was an afterthought, and basically most people who have come to angrily comment have taken it out of context. One of the main points of that clip is that I shot the moons of Jupiter, which are in fact slightly bigger than Pluto, but they are a heck of a lot further away. And they're in focus, and when you look at the image you may say, well, they're not quite round. The reason for that is image stacking, which is how you bring up brightness. It's a typical thing you do in astrophotography. But nonetheless, in the original images that are unstacked, those are perfect points of light, which is indicated by the video that I show. So those moons are being shot at massive distances, according to NASA, compared to the 9, 8, 7, whatever it is, million miles. Hard to tell on some of the images that came out of Wiki Commons that I used to show Pluto. There's a funny thing that goes on here. If you asked people in the United States, do you trust your government, I doubt you would have very few that said yes at this point. And yet what NASA is in fact a government agency, but somehow they get a pass. They have pretty pictures and these fantastic missions and one thing after another where people who distrust their government think NASA is good to go. And you can't separate those two things. NASA is a government entity, and as a matter of fact, it has become a bad word. I recently looked at a satellite company, and many of the people working for it claimed all this aerospace industry experience, and it was clear that over the last 40 years, one of the main places you had to do that was NASA, but none of them would say the word NASA because it has become a bad word for thinking individuals. Even some of the people on these resumes stated they worked with Wernher von Braun in the Apollo mission and still would not say the word NASA in their resume. When you consider the moon landings and really consider them and just stop accepting that I want to believe these things are true and go out and actually do a detailed analysis, what you find is that what you've been presented with was not what you were told it was. It's that simple. I would also mention that recently National Geographic, which is probably one of the last magazines with major world circulation. I don't know about that, but I know that it does have good circulation still, comparatively. Ran a cover story where the people who doubt the moon landing were featured prominently and belittled on the cover. That is a telling thing. That means something. To do the effort to put that on a cover of a magazine like National Geographic has a bearing. It has a meaning. There is a reason for these things, and it also demonstrates so many people are no longer accepting just any old thing NASA wants to tell us. On top of that, either naming space objects is a serious endeavor, either words have meaning, and there is an importance here, or they don't. And yet what we find in the demotion of Pluto from a planet to a, quote, dwarf planet, and there's a whole litany of things behind that you could cover, there are a couple Kuiper Belt objects we are told that were bigger, which helped demote it, among other things. But two of those objects, get this, two of those objects were named Easter Bunny and Santa. Either words have meaning or they do not. Those are fantasies. Those are non-reality entities being named after supposed real space objects, and either words mean something or they don't. And if you cannot get beyond the gross appearance of what is going on and subtly understand what is going on, you will not accept that, oh, this was shot near Easter or we were in the happy holidays near Christmas. That's hogwash. Either this is serious business or it is not. And in my view, you want to go around naming things Easter Bunny and Santa Claus, you're doing it for kids or you're laughing at adults. I don't know which, but it is not a serious endeavor in my mind. And Hollywood is never far behind NASA. Even on the current Pluto mission, two of the pieces of equipment are named after the honeymooners straight out of Burbank, California. You know, Ralph and Alice. There's footage, recent footage of some supposed astronaut on the ISS, you know, Skyping, I guess, with Susan Sarandon. Hollywood is ever present. We have the famous Mr. Masamoto, or whatever his name is, that shows up on Big Bang all the time. If you remember back to the moon launches, you had to be an Iron Man, the best of the best, to go to the moon. On Big Bang now, you can be a small Jewish boy that can't even run or do anything physical, no problem. You're going up to space. And you kind of see these constructs built over and over again. But in this country, well, actually probably a lot of the world, we are kind of trained to recognize only gross things. Very few of us pick up subtlety and detail, which is critical at this point when you are looking at these constructs that are being handed to you. There are really no images that are expected snapshots out of a camera from space. And most of the descriptions under those images tell you just that. It's a telemetry, it's a construct, it's a mosaic, it's some kind of created image, which is true of the Apollo 17 image we are told is the world from space, which in fact is not a snapshot of our planet from space. It just isn't. It's that simple. And so as we look at the Pluto mission, and a lot of people had a problem with the camera, well, let me tell you something. Going to space in a place you've never been, making the world wait 9 years for you to get there, and taking a 1 megapixel camera is patently ridiculous. You know, I looked up the first earliest digital cameras, and the first one out, I've posted it, I think it was Nikon, don't call me on it, it's one of those, had 1.3 megapixels. So what we are saying is that 9 years ago, NASA set out on a mission with a single megapixel, which is less than the first consumer-grade digital camera. Really? That's acceptable. If that's acceptable to you, then this conversation probably won't go anywhere. But for a critical thinking individual, you might consider that we're going to take 9 years, according to NASA, to get to a planet that we have never seen up close, and the quality of the imagery is not that important. And I'll tell you why it's not that important. Because what's going to happen is they're going to give you these low quality images, which I've kind of already showed, and lower your expectation, and then the graphic designers are going to go to work and show what they call their high def, high resolution images, which they're all called that, by the way, most of them. And it's a shell game. That is all it is. And while I don't think I'm going to take the 5 hours out of my day to really dig into all the Masonic coding of numbers and all the fakery that is visible in every single NASA mission, I will point you to the comic clip that I put up, and I will post that down in the description if you care. That is one where I spent about 5 or 6 hours doing the research, getting the images, and demonstrating the coded fraud that is being flaunted in your face. And to top it off, for people who are so used to only recognizing gross things and little detail, it's almost irony that we all know that Pluto the cartoon character was born in 1930 and Pluto the planet was found in 1930, and on top of that, I think she was 11 years old, not sure, don't remember, but some very young girl was responsible for the naming of that and claimed it had nothing to do with Disney. And you're looking at Disney, the 33rd degree Mason. You're looking at every astronaut is a Mason. You're looking at the founders of NASA being Masons. And while I don't like to say that, because I don't think we should just bag on Masons indiscriminately, the average person who is a Mason is probably just a guy that's a member of a lodge raising a family. But there is absolutely a higher level to this, which is not up to anything positive for the average person. I would say, if you want to critically look at what NASA is presenting us and look at the details and throw out your preconceived conceptions of what NASA is, or throw out that you really want it to be true and you want all this space travel, these fantastic things to be reality, what you will find is something altogether different. And I don't know what more to say about it without sitting down to doing the 5 or 6 hour clip that has all the research. like I did with the comet, the Philae comet mission. But I will post that one down, which is just another prime example of NASA fraud. Okay, to wrap this up in a way that most people should be able to understand, here's a Hubble image of Pluto on the right up there. There's a ground-based scope on the left. This was released the 4th of October in 1990. I couldn't even find it in a search engine, any of the older images, until I forced the date back because the new stuff has plugged everything up. So this is the kind of, finally when we had the Hubble, the biggest and best telescope we've got, this is what we knew of Pluto. And I know this to be true. The first time I looked at Pluto through my telescope was in the 90s. It is the dimmest, faintest looking star you will ever see. But there is a twist, another, quote, coincidence. Here's the recent New Horizons July 7, 2015 image on the left. And here is a painting done of Pluto by Don Dixon in 1979. And boy, the guy must have psychic abilities. So here is kind of the game that you see going on with NASA nonstop. If you're a person that believes in coincidences, maybe you can write this off. I do not. And this is not the first kind of time this type of thing has happened. How in the heck, with an infinite possible amount of ways this planet could have looked, could an artist in 1979 have come so close when basically the only images we had were a very faint, dim white dot? This is all the way back in the 70s this was done. So there it is. I mean, at the end of the day, you have to make your own judgment call, but come on. Either you can understand subtle detail or you can't. There it is, man. Cheers.